right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be taking a look at the North London Derby, Arsenal versus Tottenham, from January 15th, 2025.
Oh, yeah?
So this one was, on paper, it looked like it could have been a routine win for Arsenal, but they were. Coming off the back of some pretty disappointing exits from both the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. And they're needing to make a statement, especially with Liverpool 4 points clear at the top of the table at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think what was so interesting about this match for me was the narrative in the lead up to it wasn't so much focused on like the typical derby rivalry, but more on the pressure that Arsenal were under to win. It was almost as if like the stakes were beyond just the immediate game. You know what I mean?
It was a real test of their, mental toughness. Could they bounce back from those setbacks and really handle the pressure of everyone expecting them to win? Have you ever felt that kind of pressure? Like it's not just about the event itself, it's about something bigger. So, onto the match itself. The first half was a real roller coaster. Arsenal actually started really strong, dominating possession. But then out of nowhere, Son Heung-min scores for Spurs in the 25th minute.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this thinking like, oh no, here we go again.
It was a bit of a strange one though, because that goal came from like a really speculative shot from Son. It was almost against the run of play. I think it just highlighted one of those tactical vulnerabilities that we've seen from Arsenal before, where when they push so many players forward, they can get caught out by those quick counterattacks.
Right, totally. But to their credit, they didn't just, collapse. Instead, they came right back at Spurs, scoring 2 goals in quick succession. First, it was Gabriel with a header from a corner. And then just 4 minutes later, Trossard puts them ahead.
2-1.
What a turnaround. What do you think? Was this just pure attacking power from Arsenal, or was there a tactical shift that led to those goals?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, those 2 goals really showed their adaptability.
Yeah.
And their attacking threat.
Yeah.
But when you look at the first half overall, they actually had a lot of other good chances that they didn't take. So they were creating those opportunities, but they weren't quite clinical enough in front of goal.
Yeah, that's a good point. It reminds me of those cup losses we were talking about earlier, where they dominated possession but just couldn't convert their chances. Is this becoming like a recurring problem for them?
Yeah, potentially.
Is it a personnel issue? Like, do they need a different striker? Or is it more of a tactical thing?
I think to really understand that, we need to look at what happened in the second half. Because that's where I think those issues became even more apparent.
Okay, interesting. Let's get into that then.
Yeah.
Because as I recall, Arsenal continued to control the game in the second half.
Yes.
But they didn't really turn that dominance into like a comfortable lead.
We didn't.
Did they?
No. It didn't.
So we were just talking about Arsenal's attack and whether they can, find that clinical edge. But before we go too far down that road, I was thinking about something you mentioned earlier about their vulnerability to counterattacks. Wasn't their high press like a really key part of their dominance in this match? Would tweaking that have, maybe left them a bit exposed at the back?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's definitely a tough balancing act for Arteta because on the one hand, the high press is so effective for them. They create so many turnovers and it just fuels their attack. But at the same time, if the other team, if they can break through that press, then there is space behind for them to exploit. And Son's goal is a perfect example of that. One well-placed pass, and suddenly Arsenal's defenders are scrambling.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's like in tactic, there's always some kind of trade-off. You gain something. Yeah. But you also risk something else. So let's talk about some of the individual performances in this match. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Trossard's goal was the difference maker. Well, do you think he's done enough to earn a more consistent starting role, even when Saka and Jesus are back?
That's a good question. I think it's a testament to Arsenal's strength and depth that they have someone like Trossard who can come in and make such a big impact. He wasn't just in the right place at the right time for that goal. His movement off the ball was really impressive. He was creating space, dragging defenders out of position. He wasn't a direct replacement for Saka or Jesus, but he offered something different to their attack.
Yeah, he was really dangerous every time he got the ball. I remember one sequence in particular where he cut inside from the left and just completely left Emerson Royal for dead. And then he nearly set up Nketiah for a tap-in. If Nketiah had been a bit sharper with his finishing, it could have been a very different scoreline. And that actually brings us to, I guess we could call it the elephant in the room, which is this lack of a clinical striker. Do you think that's the missing piece of the puzzle for Arsenal?
It's certainly. a major talking point among the fans. And I understand their frustrations. I mean, they dominated the game in terms of possession and chances created, yet they only won by a single goal.
They're just missing that killer instinct in front of goal.
Right. And it's not just this game, is it? It's been a bit of a pattern throughout the season.
Exactly. If you look at their expected goals compared to their actual goals scored, there's a pretty big difference. They're creating good chances, but they're not converting them consistently enough.
So, the issue isn't necessarily creating those opportunities, but it's that final touch, that killer instinct in the box.
Yeah.
What about the other end of the pitch? I mean, I thought their defense looked a bit shaky at times, especially when Spurs scored that early goal.
Yeah, there were definitely a few moments where Tottenham were able to expose some weaknesses in Arsenal's defense. And I have to say, Spurs goalkeeper, Antonin Kinski, he didn't have a great game.
Oh, yeah, he did not.
His positioning on the corner that led to Gabriel's goal was questionable. And he fumbled a few other shots that could have easily resulted in goals for Arsenal. I was going to say, there's that one save, or I guess you could say lack of a save, where he spilled the ball right into Odegaard's path.
Yes.
And luckily for Spurs, Odegaard's shot went wide. But if Kinski had been a bit sharper, could that have been a different game?
It's definitely possible. I think a more confident goalkeeper might have, given the Spurs defense a bit more belief. But you also have to give credit to Arsenal's midfield. They were absolutely dominant in this match.
Well, for sure. Rice and Odegaard, they were just controlling the tempo, dictating the play. Rice's passing range was phenomenal, just spraying those long diagonal balls. Like, it was nothing.
And Odegaard. Well, he was just being Odegaard.
Yeah.
Pulling the strings, creating chances.
Just everywhere.
Yeah. I think their midfield partnership is really starting to blossom and complement each other so well. Rice provides that steal and the distribution, and then Odegaard adds the creativity and the flair.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that Arsenal's best performances this season have come when their midfield is firing on all cylinders.
You know, it's funny you should say that, because this match, it really felt like a microcosm of this tactical battle between Arteta and Postecoglou. You know, Arsenal's high press. It was so stifling at times, but as we discussed, it also left them vulnerable at the back.
Absolutely. It was a real high-risk, high-reward approach from Arteta. And for most of the match, it worked. They forced Spurs into so many mistakes, disrupted their rhythm, and they really prevented Tottenham from building any kind of sustained attack.
Yeah. But then again, that early goal for Spurs, it showed just how dangerous that strategy can be.
Exactly.
It seemed like Postecoglou recognized that vulnerability, and he was trying to exploit it with those quick counterattacks.
Yeah, and that's what makes these tactical battles so interesting. Arteta had to adjust his approach throughout the game, trying to find that balance between maintaining the press, but also making sure his team was defensively solid. It's not easy.
So, in a way, this wasn't just Arsenal versus Tottenham. It was a clash of styles. You had Arteta's high-pressing, possession-based approach going up against Postecoglou's more counter-attacking style.
Yeah.
And even though Arsenal won the match, it doesn't necessarily mean that one style is better than the other.
No, not at all. It's all about how well each team executes their game plan and how they adapt to the opponent's tactics.
It really makes you appreciate the depth of strategy involved in football, doesn't it? It's not just about having the best players. It's about how those players are used, how the team reacts to different situations, and how the manager makes adjustments throughout the match.
100% agree.
So, both teams, despite the, contrasting results, they both have some things to work on. Moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to this match and how it shapes their seasons.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what makes football so great, isn't it? A single game can tell you so much about a team, their strengths, their weaknesses, their potential. It sparks all these debates, all this emotion, and it leaves us wondering what if and what's next.
Totally. It's more than just the 90 minutes on the pitch. It's all the stories that come out of it, the tactical battles, the human drama.
I think to really get a sense of all that, we should take a look at the fan reactions to this match.
Yeah.
Because I bet it was pretty intense, especially online.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I can't wait to dive into that. Let's see what the fans had to say about this roller coaster of a game. Okay, so let's get into those fan reactions then. I mean, after a game like that, I bet the online forums were on fire.
Oh, yeah, they were buzzing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really interesting to see how this match kind of resonated with both sets of supporters.
Yeah.
So over on the Arsenal forums, there was definitely a sense of relief mixed with like a cautious optimism.
Makes sense.
There was a lot of praise for Trossard. People were calling him a super sub,
Yeah.
a game changer. But there was also this feeling that They should have won more convincingly.
Yeah, I saw that too. Like,
Yeah.
browsing through some of the threads, it seems like Arsenal fans are kind of torn
It hurt.
between, celebrating the win and kind of lamenting the missed opportunities.
Right. It's like that classic glass half full, glass half empty situation.
Exact.
And for a lot of them, they keep coming back to that lack of a clinical striker. Some are even saying that the club used to go out and sign a proven goal scorer in the next transfer window.
Wow. So even in victory, that concern about their finishing is still there?
It's definitely lingering.
But I also saw a lot of comments praising the team's resilience and that never give up attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, they went behind, but they didn't let their heads drop. They fought their way back into the match and they got the 3 points.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot about the mentality of this Arsenal team. They've been criticized in the past for maybe lacking that grit and determination, but this performance showed a different side to them.
Yeah.
They weren't at their best, but they found a way to win, and that's what good teams do.
For sure. So what about the Spurs fans? How are they feeling after this one?
Well, as you can imagine, there's a lot more frustration and disappointment over there. Yeah. Some fans are pointing the finger at Postecoglou, questioning his tactics and his substitutions.
Okay.
They feel like he didn't set the team up properly to deal with Arsenal's strengths.
Yeah, I saw a few comments about his decision to start Kinski in goal.
Right.
Especially after some of his less than impressive performances recently.
Yeah.
You think that criticism of Postecoglou is fair, or is it just a knee-jerk reaction to a bad result?
I think it's probably a bit of both, to be honest. It's always easy to criticize the manager after a loss.
Yeah.
Especially in a big game like this.
Yeah.
But I do think there are some legitimate questions about Postecoglou's tactics in this match.
Okay.
I mean, Tottenham were outplayed for long periods, and they struggled to create any clear-cut chances.
Yeah. They never really looked like they were in control of the game, did they?
No, not really. It felt like they were always on the back foot, reacting to what Arsenal were doing, rather than imposing their own game on the match.
Yeah. They had a few bright moments, but overall they just lacked that attacking spark.
Exactly. And if you look at the fan reactions a bit closer, you see a lot of concern about their defense.
Okay.
Obviously, Kinski made some mistakes, but even beyond that, the whole backline looked a bit disorganized and vulnerable.
Yeah, they gave Arsenal too much space in dangerous areas.
They did.
And they just couldn't cope with the pace of players like Trossard and Martinelli.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this defeat forces Postecoglou to rethink his approach.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs to adopt a more pragmatic, defensively solid style of play, especially against the top teams.
Yeah. Maybe he needs to find more of a balance between attacking flair and defensive stability.
The Premier League is ruthless. You can't afford to be too open at the back.
So both teams have things to work on. Despite the different results, it's going to be fascinating to see how they both respond to this match and how it affects the rest of their seasons.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we love football, right? One game can reveal so much about a team, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they need to work on. It sparks these debates. It gets people talking. It makes us think.
Yeah. It's not just about what happens on the pitch. It's about all the stories that come out of it. The tactical battles, the human drama. It's what makes football so captivating. So to all the Arsenal fans out there, enjoy this win, but don't get complacent. And to the Spurs supporters, don't lose heart. There's still a long way to go in this season.
And to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep analyzing, and keep the conversations going. That's what makes being a football fan so great.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the North London derby. We'll be back next week with another episode. So until then, take care.